I want to gently open a conversation today, not to debate religion, not to challenge anyone's faith, but to just widen the lens. This is a conversation that came up in our network at Elemental Growth, and it's one that's been expanded on many, many times, not only in our own little circle, but the collective as well. This episode or show or what conversation is especially for anyone who has wondered how psychedelics, Christianity, or Catholicism might even exist in the same conversation. Especially when it comes to psychedelics for more of a therapeutic use. So you might hear people say things that psychedelics are permitted for therapeutic use within the Catholic teaching, and this often refers to sacraments. And while that's sometimes quoted, it's not really that straightforward. Historically, Catholicism has not supported experiences that place individuals in direct contact with the divine outside of the church hierarchy, which is also patriarch. And it's not about the substances itself, it's about direct knowing. So even in the Bible, it said, Yahweh said that he didn't want anyone eating from the Garden of Eden, the tree of knowledge, the fruit of knowledge, because they would be just like we are. So essentially not wanting the people to know what they know. And when people access this truth, healing or God, without meditation or mediation, like without the institution, without that patriarch or hierarchy, then the institution themselves fall and feel threatened by the possibility that they could fall or that they wouldn't be needed. But it's not really even about any of that at all. It's really about power over the human, power over the soul. This is really old school stuff, and it is so relatable and important today because of the rise in addictions, in pharmaceutical use and dependence, in this uncovering of these conspiracy theories of our dominator culture and our culture in itself, not being built on a sustainable model. I know I'm going off topic here. So, yeah, let's just come to this point about just come back to Catholic religion as a whole and just use an example that can be relatable. So AA removed psychedelics, and Carl Jung and Bill Wilson talked so much about psychedelics and tapping into the spirit and tapping into this knowing and this understanding as as one of those steps. In fact, the most important of the 12-step program. And in recovery history, early AA was deeply influenced by psychedelic experiences. But when the churches took it over, those elements were immediately removed, not because they didn't work, but because they didn't align with the authority structures. And we'll see this over and over and over again. So I actually encourage any of you guys to comment some areas where you see this. Maybe you see it in the hospital setting or in a different industry or something. Just let me know. Anyways, in ancient cultures, if we can zoom out further, the story changes completely. Some of the oldest cultures on earth worked with entheogens sacramentally, and the people who were highly sensitive, the ones who today might be labeled as addicts or too much, those were often the healers, the visionaries, the leaders of their families. This doesn't mean religion has no place. It means that our human story is much older than any single institution. There are bridges being built. There has been books like Sacred Mushrooms and the Cross, the Immortality Key, these explore early Christianity through this lens. And John Allegro, who wrote Sacred Mushroom and the Cross, that was horrible. I mean, I think it's a great book, but there's a lot of people that were really against it because it changed what religion could have been. It shared truth and history that was taken out of the Bible and not shared even by word of mouth. And in the beginning, when colonization was happening, the picture that they were bringing to a lot of tribes was of this psychedelic Jesus. It also had Jesus in three different parts, or three versions of Jesus: the Father, the Son, Holy Spirit is what they say. But it's also very much like Hecate, the moon goddess that had three parts. So, there's these things where, the divine masculine and the divine feminine weave in. There's these things where, history is changed and kind of even extorted, so that we don't tap into our own personal power. And interestingly, also, one of the most accepted modern scholars on this topic never even had a psychedelic experience. And that's the one who, Brian, I can't remember his last name, but he's the one who wrote the Immortality Key, because he wanted to be taken more seriously in academic spaces where others were dismissed. I'm still getting over a sickness, so I'm going to wait my nose here for a sec. No. Okay, sorry about that. Personal moment. Anyways, yeah, I want to share something personal too, because I don't want to speak always just like from theory or from what other people are saying. I carry my own grief around religion, stories that I've written about, stories that I've shared. I'd be happy to have these conversations deeper with you, but anyways, I want to share that I do carry this deep love and reverence for Christ. And in a Bufo experience, I didn't just meet an idea of Jesus, I experienced his crucifixion from inside of it. I literally blasted off through history and landed on the cross. I was on the cross. I couldn't see much, just blood, blurred visions, crowds. I could hear some weeping. I could hear some like yelling and raging even, but it was like very blurred, much like my vision. I could look down at my hands and I saw blood. I knew that there was blood coming from my head. I couldn't feel it though. What I did feel was this energy, almost like this electromagnetic Reiki-like energy moving through my body. I'd look at my hands and I see the blood, and it would just be electromagnetic energy going right up into my heart. There was no pain. That was the message. There is no pain. There's only love. And eventually my vision cleared into love itself. This isn't about dogma. It's about Christ consciousness. I'm not here for dogma at all. I'm not here for patriarch. I'm not here for any belief systems that kill, divide, or control, like Christianity. Like 50 million people have been killed. And not only is that who has been killed, they weren't just doing killing. There was a lot of other things that really messed with humanity and our human story. And I want to share that what I do believe is, and I do believe this deeply, that the human capacity to love and our ability to access that Christ consciousness directly is not through a hierarchy, it's through embodiment. And so that means that not only the sacrament and the psychedelic itself, but that integration work, again, to make every day, a step in that direction. Okay, so let's go back even further now. Like if we go back before the doctrine, we reach the garden. the fruit that brings knowledge. So warning that eating it can make humans like God. The serpent, who, when you look through even older religions and goddess religions, that serpent could have possibly even been Lilith in another form. And that serpent invites Eve to eat. She does, and she shares it with her husband, Adam, and suddenly awareness comes. They know that they are naked. They hide because they don't want to share their naked body or be seen naked in the eyes of the Lord. That's how they found out. That's how the Yahweh, the gods, found out that they had eaten. So when there came this self-knowing, there also came blame, and women became the problem. But this isn't the first time in the human story where women were to blame, because there was the killing of the old goddess religions to bring up the patriarch, to bring up this gospel of God in Jesus. So these stories existed long before the Bible. There are even temples older than Eden, stories older than Genesis, and they all point to the same thing, that human consciousness has always sought remembering. This doesn't mean psychedelics are for everyone. It doesn't mean religion is wrong. It means that we can hold a more mature, a more compassionate, integrated understanding. We can do this now from where we stand, from where we are in our story of this human unraveling. It could be a story where faith, medicine, history, and lived experiences are all allowed to coexist, and where love, not fear, leads. You know, if we think about Napoleon Hill's teachings of when he wrote Outwitting the Devil, another book that was condemned, even though it was written in the 1920s, it didn't actually get released until I believe after he had passed. It might have even been in recent days it was uncovered and shared. But in that, when he's channeling the devil, calls forth the devil to have a real conversation about what's happening in the world and how, and to understand the opposition, also God and the devil. He wanted to understand both. So it's not like he was channeling it to be demonic. He was channeling it to understand where he stood in the human story. And it's really incredible. And one of the things that comes up from the very beginning is that every atom has a positive and a negative. And that's what we're faced with the devil and the opposition being God, or God and the opposition being the devil. It also means that it's in everything. So it's that yin yang that we are always faced with. No matter what, there's always that positive and the negative, and we can look for that and find it within everything. So it really becomes a choice, love over fear. Fear is how, in that book, that the devil was able to get in and control the person. You know, and this is also why eating from the fruit, another one of the things that came up in that story of Genesis, is that that there was this awareness, and they wrote this in Genesis. There was this awareness of what good versus evil is. So essentially, before they had that awakening, they didn't know. They just followed and did what they were told until the serpent, or Lilith, came and enlightened Eve, and then Eve ate the fruit, shared the fruit, and then they knew that what was good and what was bad, and they knew more about themselves. So I don't believe God is threatened at all by us remembering. If there is a God or a goddess or a creator, you know, I'm indigenous, so creators oftentimes what we call, but we also had the colonization. So, you know, a lot of my ancestors, including me, was still raised in Catholic schools and churches. And so there is a lot of grief there. But here's like the message, you know, God or creator, or, you know, whatever that higher being energy is, if you believe in something outside of yourself, it's not threatened by us remembering. I believe, if anything, it's welcoming us to remember that love, that higher power, welcomes our remembering. And Yeah, I love these conversations. I'm not the scholar of it all. I don't know everything. And the truth is, any scholar out there that thinks that they know, they don't, because they weren't there in human history to have witnessed it. You know, there are very few things that we are guaranteed in this life. We are guaranteed that we will die one day. We are guaranteed that things will change a lot. We are guaranteed that there is going to be taxes probably till the day that we die, just for some humor. But we are also guaranteed that we will be wrong a lot. And I don't dismiss that. I don't think that I am the be all to end all, the wisest fucking priestess. Sorry for my language if there's kids watching this or in the room, but I do believe in the human. I do believe in the human experience. I do believe that these medicines, these sacraments have been around longer than any religion, that we have coexisted and grown with these plants, with these frogs, with these fungi. And I believe that we have a symbiotic relationship with them. I believe that they share messages and allow us to pick up the breadcrumbs from our ancestors and from our history, and maybe even the possibility of reliving some history to really make it, make our own understanding a little bit stronger, if any of this makes sense. I love y'all. I don't want to waste any more of your time with these rants. But let's chat anyways. If you want to, you know, if you're that person that stayed till the end and, and, you know, has something to say. Okay. I love y'all. Bye.